Donald Trump made history by becoming the first ever former US president to be criminally convicted. A New York jury this week found him guilty of falsifying business records to commit election fraud in a case which involved the cover-up of hush money payments made to buy the silence of a porn star in the days before the 2016 election. He was found guilty on all 34 counts and is due to be sentenced on the 11th of July, just before the Republican convention, which is set to formally nominate him as the party's candidate for president once again. So here to discuss this, I'm joined by Bob Weiner, Democratic strategist and former spokesperson for the Clinton and George W. Bush administrations, and Seb Gorka, former deputy assistant to President Donald Trump. Welcome both to the show. Seb, I'd like to come to you first about this. From a British perspective, a lot of people are very confused. They see this as a misdemeanor, which is beyond the statute of limitations, that has somehow been elevated into a felony. How exactly has that been achieved?
With pixie dust and a lot of hatred. Thank you, Andrew. It's been a while. Yeah, you're absolutely right. These were, if a crime had occurred, they would have been misdemeanors that would have simply been irrelevant at this point because they'd expired under the statute of limitations for New York. However, in some strange kind of incantation that no one can explain, they were connected to a business expense filing in the January after the election in 2016, and that somehow made it a magic felony, which is weird because how can you undermine an election 3 months after it occurred? So we know what this is. It's a stitch-up job. It's a hatchet job. Biden is being trounced in the polls by my former boss, so they want to steal the election before the first ballot is cast. So there's a reason that the president garnered $54 million of donations in the 24 hours after the quote-unquote conviction, because Americans see through this for what it is. It's just political hackery.
I'm going to bring Bob Weiner in there. What do you make of that analysis? I mean, it's certainly the case, isn't it, that we've had lawyers and legal experts on the left as well really troubled by the fact that this ever made it as far as it did. Do you see this in any way helping Trump's campaign?
No, and I love the spin that Sebastian puts on it, except for the fact that 12 jurors decided 34 legal counts. I thought it might have even been the 9 that Trump signed himself, but that memo that involved everybody around Trump who always met with him was convincing as well, from Weisselberg, and so his chief financial officer. So this was a documented case. It wasn't just Michael Cohen or David Pecker or Stormy Daniels. It was the paperwork. Trump signed the checks. I mean, how much more do you need? And so this is a guilty. Every newspaper in the country said that he was guilty. 34 counts. And how did it get to be a felony? Because it was tied to election rigging and the meetings. Even Hope Hicks confirmed that it was a crisis about what happened with Access Hollywood, and he didn't want more anti-woman stuff. Okay, so every newspaper in the country made it that it was tied to election rigging. It was a continuation of election rigging that he did in Georgia and trying to change the electors of people that weren't even electors, making them electors all around the country.
What?
This guy has decided that the law is applicable to nobody but him, and the American people are sick of it.
Bob, I just want to bring Seb in here. Now, Bob Weiner there making the case that he's clearly guilty. It's election rigging. One thing I don't understand is that Alvin Bragg, the DA, doesn't have jurisdiction for a federal crime. I mean, he can prosecute based on a state crime, but not a federal crime. And that's the way they've elevated this to a felony. So how did this happen?
Well, good for you. Good for you. And the FEC, can you stop talking when he's asking me, Bob? Just stop it. The fact is that the
Sebastian,
Federal Elections Commission, the Federal Elections
I'll come to you in 1 second. Let me just hear what Seb has to say. I will come to you in 1 second.
Leftist just can't debate. Just a typical leftist. Look, the Federal Elections Commission said no crime. The feds said that. Bragg's predecessor, Cyrus Vance Jr., said no crime. Even Alvin Bragg prior said no crime. But then he was in a campaign for re-election. It's a weird thing here, I know, but we have elections for prosecutors. And this hack, who was funded by George Soros, said, I'm going to put Donald Trump behind bars. That's how independent he was. So, no, he has no jurisdiction. That's why they couldn't even explain what the crime was, it's really weird. How do you have election interference 3 months after the election occurred? It is an absolute farrago. It's a nonsense. But don't worry, Trump is now stronger than he has ever been since he came down the escalators. Go to my Twitter feed, go to Seth Gorka and see all the Democrats
your Twitter feed.
with the screenshots.
Okay,
he's
let
doing
me
it.
answer on the polls, though, that aren't yours.
Bob, let me come to, thank you, Seb. Let me just come to Bob on that point, because a lot of people are saying that this is helping Donald Trump. A lot of people have seen, for instance, that the judge in this case was a donor. It was only a small amount, but did donate to an anti-Trump campaign. And by New York rules, as you will be aware, he's meant to recuse himself. He didn't do that, did he?
There was no call for him to recuse. It was people seem to be in the spirit of blaming their wives. You know, his wife is the one who's most involved, just like Clarence Thomas's wife and Alito's wife. So, I mean, let's get over the wives here. But really, let's look at the polls, which Sebastian doesn't seem to want to care. 26% of Republicans less likely to vote for Trump, 11% of independents. Biden now in the latest polls has taken a slight lead when he was like 5 behind before this trial. People read the real news. And Andrew, the real news is that he was convicted on 34 felony counts and has tried to delay on all of his other trials. And people are wising up to it, so that a woman in my wife's church, who's the choir director today, said it's time to pay the piper.
That, Seb, I want to come to you on that, because a lot of people say that, you know, obviously the Democrats now in their campaign are going to be repeating that phrase, convicted felon, and that could have an impact, particularly on those floating voters who, irrespective of what they think about the legitimacy of the trial, might just be nervous about having a convicted felon in the White House.
Andrew, I'm not debating anymore. I mean, I surrender. The choir director in Bob's church has said pay the piper. So, I mean, end of story. You know, the sword of Damocles has landed. Look, don't listen to lunatics who believe in fake news. Go and watch the footage on my Twitter feed of President Trump arriving in the New Jersey WMA, in the wrestling ring for the UFC yesterday. The biggest ovation, not for a rock star, not for a wrestler, not for an MMA fighter, but for President Trump after the conviction. Look at the footage from his campaign. I've been to a lot of rallies with the boss. We've never had a rally in the last 8 years of 100,000 people in a Democrat state in New Jersey. In the Bronx, 30,000. And the clip I play every single day on my radio show, Andrew, the little 10-year-old black kid in Harlem, not exactly MAGA country, seeing President Trump and saying, "We love you, Trump." Then the little Hispanic girl behind him joins in. And then all the adults in Harlem say, "We love you, Trump." America has woken up, and they've had it with the decrepit, senile old man in the White House.
Let's leave the question of popularity aside, or whether this is going to help or hinder Trump when it comes to the election. But, Bob, can I ask you about the kind of precedent that this sets? Because there's a very good reason, isn't there, that historically political parties haven't gone after former presidents and charged them for criminal activity. I mean, I know that Trump had the whole chant of lock her up, but he never actually did it, did he? And once this happens, doesn't it open a kind of Pandora's box? Doesn't this open the possibility for Biden to be prosecuted? Doesn't it open the possibility for Alvin Bragg to be prosecuted for election interference?
Well, a couple things, Andrew. First of all, I never heard from Sebastian. Never heard. He didn't do it. Haven't heard from any of the Republicans, the puppets that stood around the news conferences that Trump staged. He didn't do it. He didn't do it. And never heard from Trump anything like Bill Clinton did when he had a similar thing with the women that he was involved with. And he said to his wife, to his family, to his country, "I'm sorry." The magic words, self-recognition.
What?
That's what's going to bring Trump down, is he has none of that. And that's what the polling is showing. Now, in terms of other presidents, no other president has done the kind of crimes that Trump did, and lies and cover-ups. That's why he was indicted. That's why he was convicted. No other president has done it. So when Trump says nobody else, nobody else did what you did.
But wouldn't the Democrats, Bob, wouldn't they argue that, the Republicans, wouldn't they argue that the Hillary Clinton's email wiping would classify as something that's potentially prosecutable?
She didn't say she didn't do it, first of all. And I've seen every Trump staffer using personal emails, too, by the way. And there was really no classifieds out of her emails.
Oh,
that was a very debatable situation. Oh, God, I know. But that was a very debatable situation, what happened to her. And by the way, the polls showed that before Comey came forward with his news conference reinvestigating and later silently saying, "Oh, no, we didn't mean it," when Comey, there was a 10-point flip. So it's in Hillary's book, and I put it in the Des Moines Register, that there was a 10-point vote switch when Comey did his news conference from before and after. Robbie Mook, Clinton's campaign manager, said 10-point switch in the polls from what Comey did.
OK, well, let me come to Seb on that, because Bob makes a point about, Trump hasn't shown remorse. This is something that is taken into account when it comes to sentencing. And on July the 11th, this might be the thing that might justify the judge going for jail time, or Alvin Bragg asking for jail time. Do you think that's likely? Because obviously he can't show remorse, can he?
No, because he's innocent. And I don't know where you found this old fossil, but listen, the only thing we remember about Bill Clinton, the only phrase anyone remembers about Bill Clinton is not "I'm sorry," because he never said it. The only phrase is "I didn't have sex with that woman. I didn't have sex with that woman." That's the only thing we remember. I mean, oh, and by the way, when it comes to the emails, Comey himself in front of the world said there were 18 emails that were top secret SCI on her private server. Each one of those is a felony, and she should be in prison right now.
Sorry, finally on this, we haven't got much time, unfortunately, because I could debate this all day. It's a lot of fun. But I want to ask you first, is Trump going to serve jail time? Will the judge go that far? Seb, I'm going to come to you first on that.
Well, he is a prostitute for the left. I mean, this is a man, when I was in the courtroom sitting behind President Trump 10 days ago, he told, as the defense was about to stand up, the judge in front of us, we're witnesses in the courtroom, said, "Sit down. I don't want to hear from you." This is a guy who should be wearing the jersey of the Biden DOJ. So anything is possible. But woe betide that man, because that's a dangerous move.
Same question to Bob. Do you see it as dangerous if he does serve jail time? Do you think he will?
Well, danger. I went to the first day of the Bragg trials, and there were 7 Trump people and 3,000 media out in front. I mean, the violence is not going to happen. I actually agree with people who said that. I also agree with Seb, and I think we'll have an agreement here. He probably will not do jail time. The judge will probably give him probation, give him extremely strong wording. And even despite the 10 gag order violations, that judge made an exception. And you can see in the trial, you talk about the judge being unfair. The judge said during the trial, well, we have to recognize that you're a former president. He gave him that. And I didn't know where that came from, that he had to say that. So the judge said that during the trial. So that judge would bend over backwards to be fair. And I think that's what's going to happen here, because the judge will try to avoid violence and give Trump due deference. Understood. But he will do justice.
Bob, we have to